I find some of the most powerful content in anything that I've ever done is answering the questions that we get in the sales process, answering questions that we get from clients. And that's something actually I learned from our mutual friend, James Schramko. You know, he creates a lot of the ways that he answers questions to his clients is by making a podcast episode about it or a social media post or whatever. I thought that's a very, very clever way because first of all, you're answering the question for that specific person. But also if that person asked it, there's probably about 100 other people who have the same question, but just haven't asked it. And so you're now creating content, not by just dreaming some random stuff up. You're creating content that people actually want, that people are wondering, you know, what's the answer to that question? And they read or listen or watch your content and they're like, great, answered my question.
Hello and welcome to Marketing Speak. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer. It is my pleasure to have Allan Dib back with us. Allan is a rebellious marketer, serial entrepreneur, and a #1 best-selling author. Allan has made it his life's work to simplify the complex, providing clear, structured, and simple frameworks for marketing success and rapid business growth. The Huffington Post named his book, The One-Page Marketing Plan, as one of the 10 best marketing books, and he's closing in on 1 million copies sold. He was a previous guest, as I mentioned, episode 227. And in that episode, we dive deep into the one-page marketing plan. His newest book, which we'll be talking at length about in this episode, is Lean Marketing, More Leads, More Profit, Less Marketing. It's out as of May 7th. And for the incredible steal of $2.99 on Kindle. Incidentally, his other book, The One-Page Marketing Plan, is also $2.99 on Kindle. So get both. What an incredible steal. Allan has also had his book, his One-Page Marketing Plan book, translated into 30 languages, and it has changed the way over 1 million businesses globally are marketing. Allan, it's so great to have you back on the show.
Hey, Stephan, always a pleasure to speak to you and a pleasure to be back.
Yeah. So what inspired you to put out another book?
Well, I think I think it was Seth Godin who says you should only ever write a book when you have to, right? And so that's really, I don't believe in just churning out books on a cadence like many authors do. Nothing wrong with that if that's what you want to do. But to me, it was a book that's really needed in the marketplace. It helps with marketing implementation. So the first book was all about getting your marketing plan right, which is what you need when you're getting started. And really the next book is about marketing implementation, which is essentially the book version of our coaching program. It's basically what we do in our coaching program, how we take someone through marketing implementation from zero to hero.
So what is the process? Do you have a special framework that you dreamed up in the middle of the night or something? Or how
I didn't dream it up in the middle of the night. We did it through blood, sweat, and tears with clients over many years. So there are 3 real pillars to lean marketing. And before I get into the framework, the idea behind lean marketing is taking a lot of the principles from the world of lean manufacturing and lean thinking, which is about getting bigger results with less marketing. And the reason that's important is because a lot of business owners don't have huge resources to implement into marketing. Like a lot of big companies can spend millions of dollars, they can have years to get a result, whereas a lot of small businesses need to get bigger results by doing actually less marketing. And you read most marketing books or take a marketing course or whatever, and it's just adding and adding and adding stuff to your to-do list. And a large part of the success that we've had with a lot of clients is how can we actually do less stuff? How can we do less stuff and get a bigger result? And one of the real turning points was when I looked at the most sophisticated, best marketers in the world, and I would include you in that list, Stephan. They're actually not doing a lot of things. Their not to-do list is actually bigger than their to-do list. The number of things that they actually do is very, very small. They're not on every platform. They're not doing millions of different things. They've really honed in on one or two things and they're getting an outsized result. And so that's a lot of the core thinking around lean marketing is how can we do less stuff but get a much bigger impact. And so the core to that is leverage. Like if you want to get a bigger result with less input, so if we want to get more money or more energy or more time by doing less, you need leverage. There's no other way. And so what leverage is essentially is a force multiplier. So there are really three force multipliers I talk about in the book, and they're broken up by the three major sections of the book. The first is tools. The second is assets, and the third is processes. So tools, assets, and processes are how we get leverage from a marketing perspective, and I'm happy to dive into those as we go.
So you have three force multipliers. You have tools, assets, and processes. How did you come about with three? Why not four? Why not five? And why these three?
Well, they're the three that we found most impactful. So, and I'll talk about a little bit about each, but really they're the ones that we felt moved the needle the most for clients. So, and like I said, a lot of the principles of lean marketing and a lot of what we're doing are coming from not something I dreamt up in a dream one day. It's from actual work with clients over many, many years. And so they were the things that we found were most impactful when we were to boil down what were the few things that really made a difference for clients. It was those three things.
Gotcha. Well, let's start with tools. I'd love to hear how you break that whole area down because I personally love tools. I geek out on tools, but I also know that you can get too bogged down in the tools and lose sight of the bigger picture.
That's a very good insight, and I cover that in the book as well. So look, tools are what really separates our species from every other species out there, right? So there are
Except for
humans.
crows. I think crows are pretty
It's
good at using tools.
Well, yeah, there are. Yeah, true, and there's certainly, and I think there's certain chimpanzees that use basic tools and things like that. But there's a very firm cap. They're not constantly innovating. They're not constantly moving like humans are. So I think humans are unique in their use of tools, in the depth and the breadth of their use of tools, and so tools are what really separates us from all other species. And I mean, the rapid growth we've seen over the last 300 years or so is just incredible. And a lot of it is the result of new tools, new technologies, new ways of doing things. And so if I think about a manual task that I need to do, let's say I've got a brick wall and I need to break down, I could probably do that with my hands, but I'm going to be pretty sore. It's going to take a long time. It's going to be difficult and all that. But if I had the right tool like a sledgehammer, I could do that in a few minutes with no problem. So tools similarly, from a marketing perspective, make a huge, huge difference. So sometimes a small tool that can automate something or do something or give us leverage can make a huge, huge difference. And I have a whole chapter in the book on AI. I mean, now it's obviously a popular trend, but not because I'm trying to jump on the trend, but because it is a powerful tool if used the right way. There are ways to use it the wrong way as well, and happy to talk about that. But tools are a real force multiplier, and tools are a literal force multiplier, like in the case of a hammer or a sledgehammer or something like that. It can multiply the force of what we do. And so very much the same from a marketing perspective. So some of the core tools that have made huge differences for our clients are CRM tools, content management tools, artificial intelligence tools. So all of those kind of tools can make a huge, huge difference and help automate and augment what they're doing. Now, to tap into a point that you very rightly said, a lot of people feel like, hey, if I had Michelangelo's chisel and hammer, I'd be able to create the statue of David. It was the tool that was the special sauce, which again is not the right case as well. So I think of tools as augmenting our abilities, not replacing them. So you're not going to get an AI tool to write all the content for you because you're just going to have really crappy content, right? You're not going to get an AI tool to do it all for you. They're there to augment your abilities. So I think of it like I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Iron Man. You know, he's got that
Mhm.
exoskeletal suit that gives him powers, right? He's a normal geeky guy like you or me, but he puts on that suit and he's got now powers. He can fly, he can shoot lasers, he can do all sorts of things. And that's kind of the way I think of marketing tools. They're there not to replace us, not to do the work, but to massively augment our abilities and multiply the force of our inputs.
Yep. Yeah. Well, just the word lever and leverage is that force multiplier. You can lift a huge boulder with not very many pounds of force. Yeah.
That's very much the case. And so, so many times uh, a tool was there to help me or my clients to just be able to do much, much more with less. And that's very much a core principle of lean marketing. How can we use the right tools to do a job faster, quicker, easier, cheaper, so that we don't have to invest a lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of infrastructure into the operational stuff and allow you to spend more time in the creative work, the creative element, So like I said, I see a lot of people using AI tools and all sorts of tools wrong, right? They're like, hey, I'll create a bunch of content with AI. Like you'll see all of these TikToks and reels and saying, here, let me show you how to use ChatGPT to create 100 Instagram posts in 2 minutes, right? And like when you look at your Instagram or your TikTok or whoever you're following on any of those platforms, you're probably not following some crappy, account that's just posting cliched quotes or whatever. You're following interesting people doing interesting stuff, and you're following people. You're following someone who's actually doing something interesting, someone who's a storyteller, someone who's got interesting experiences. You're not interested in following these mass volume, crappy motivational quotes or whatever. So a lot of people are on the wrong track when it comes to tools. So you want to use tools to augment your abilities.
Yeah. So what are some examples of tools that augment your abilities or your clients?
I'll give you an example direct from my team. So recently I started a new podcast and, I've got the multi-camera setup and all of that sort of thing going.
Mhm.
And there's a tool called Descript where, normally you would have to have someone, an editor, painstakingly go through and choose when someone was the active speaker. So if we have two video feeds, one from you, one from me, normally an editor would have to go through and when you started speaking, okay, switch to your camera. When I started speaking, switch to my camera. When we're both speaking or whatever, have us both in shot. And with the script, there's a tool that automatically selects the active speaker and boom, boom, boom. In a 1 hour interview, it'll highlight the active speaker. Now, is it 100% perfect? Would I just use that and upload it immediately? Of course not. But it probably reduces 90% of the editing labor involved in creating a multi-active speaker kind of video. So that's an example of an AI tool that we've used to massively reduce the amount of labor needed for editing. And generally, as an editing tool, it's quite good. It's almost like the Google Docs of video editing.
Yeah, it is amazing. You can highlight words and then hit delete, and then they're gone from the video. You can take, let's say, a sentence, highlight that, and then drag it to the beginning, and it moves that part of the video to the beginning. You can click a little box that says remove all the filler words, and then boom, they're all gone from the video. Tick another box that says remove all the space where you're just not saying anything, and then all that's cut out too. It's amazing.
It is amazing, and
Yeah.
so it's taken away. It hasn't removed the need for an editor, but my editor can now be massively more efficient. My editor can do 10 times more volume and 10 times more work, or I can reduce the number of editors I would have needed. I might have needed 5 editors on my team, and now I can do it with one. And so that's an example of a tool giving us a lot of leverage. It's a force multiplier.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. How about getting actionable insights out of your marketing using tools like with dashboards and analytics and business intelligence?
Definitely. I love using large language models, which ChatGPT is one of them. And there's another one that I use called Claude. And I use some of the APIs into those tools as well they're great for data analysis. They're great for tasks that would have needed a lot of repetitive work, a lot of sometimes helping as a research assistant as well. So, like I said, I would never use those tools to say, hey, write me an article on how to do SEO with blah, 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 right? Because it's just going to come out with crappy, cliched content. But how I do use them is, for example, when I was writing my book, a lot of writing a book is doing research. So an example would be, show me 10, give me 10 examples of Silicon Valley companies that have had a major pivot. And so, and then boom, 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 it gives me Netflix, Slack, blah, 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 all of that. Whereas that might have taken me 3 hours to do research with just Google and reading articles and all of that. So it gave me that data. And of course, we know those tools at the moment, they're not perfect. They do hallucinate. So you do need to verify that what they come up with is actually true. But they're a massive time saver. Also with summarization of text or data or whatever. For example, I gave it a prompt. I said, summarize the story of Goldilocks and the Three Bears in 2 sentences, right? And boom, it just did it, right? So, and again, that would have been something that I could have done manually, but would have taken me maybe half an hour to do, whereas that did it in seconds. And again, the output is not perfect. I need to edit it to be in my voice and my style, and maybe not exactly the way I would have put it, but it's a massive time saver that way. So as a writing companion, as a tool to analyze data, as a tool to generate code. I mean, I'm not a coder by any stretch, but I'm a little bit of a tech geek. So sometimes I'll want to create a shell script or something that does something. And again, really, really powerful for that. So anywhere where it's doing repetitive work that you could do, but might take you a few hours, maybe you need a lot of testing, that have correct right answers. So things like legal documents, things like code, things like research, super, super powerful. So you need to use it the right way. You need to use it as an assistant rather than as something that's actually doing the work.
Yeah. Yeah. You can't replace a human with it, though you can empower a human with that
Exactly.
exoskeleton.
It's the Iron Man suit. It's the
Yeah.
Iron Man suit for marketers.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, let's move on to the next big bucket of in your framework, the assets.
Yes. So assets are another massive force multiplier for marketers, and they're a force multiplier in general. So if you think about, and I grew up in pretty average circumstances in terms of financially, so I didn't grow up wealthy. And so my first introduction to wealth, the very first book I ever read on money or wealth, was Rich Dad, Poor Dad, like many other people. And, the book definitely has its flaws, but one of the things that it was just beautiful is just the way it explains what an asset and what a liability is. So an asset is something that puts money in your pocket. A liability is something that takes money out of your pocket. And, for someone with no financial literacy, no financial background, that was such a brilliant, easy way to explain what an asset and what a liability is. And, the thing that I learned is the difference, but, a lot of people complain that the rich get richer. And the reason that the rich get richer is because they derive most of their income from assets, not from labor. There's nothing wrong with earning from labor. You work, you earn an hourly wage or whatever. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's not a great path to getting wealthy, because when you stop, the income stops, and there's really a cap on what you can really earn on an hourly basis. It's not saleable. You can't really sell your job to anyone, even if you're doing an amazing job. So whereas the wealthy, they derive most of their income from assets. So if you own stocks, you can derive dividend income. If you own property, you can derive rental income. And so the income comes in whether you work or not. The asset is often upgradable. For example, if I improve the value of the house, I can charge a higher rent. The asset is saleable. So I could sell an asset and get my capital back. So that's a lot of why the wealthy get wealthier. Now, how this applies to marketing is if you've got marketing assets, you can derive a lot of lead flow. you can derive clients, you get a lot of inbound inquiries if you've got marketing assets in the marketing place. Now, if you don't have marketing assets, you've got to do that. You've got to compensate with labor. You've got to do a lot of hunting. You've got to do cold calling. You've got to do a lot of outreach. You've got to do networking. And like I said, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's a very, very difficult way to go about marketing. It's not, and I think a good marketing infrastructure is a combination of both hunting and marketing. But if you can have a lot of hunting and a lot of farm, I call it hunting and farming. So farming is kind of predictable, right? You sow a seed, you sow a field, you water it, you take care of it, and then you harvest pretty predictably. Unless something horrible goes wrong, generally it's pretty predictable. So in a similar way, you want marketing assets that generate lead flow, that generate new people. And so what's a marketing asset? An example of a marketing asset, using my business as an example, is my books, right? So the reason that you and I are speaking today is because of an asset I've got in the marketplace. You've read a book once, and I don't remember how we initially connected, but a lot of inbound happened.
It was through
because
James
the book,
Schramko.
through James Frey, yeah, that's true, yeah. So and again, I think I spoke at that James event because I was the author of a book. And so every single day, somebody emails saying, "Hey, can you speak at my event? Can you be on my podcast? Can you tell me about your coaching program?" Whatever. So we get tons and tons of inbound because of assets we have in the marketplace. And that's regardless of whether I show up to work every day or not. That's an asset that continues generating lead flow, continues generating clients, continues generating revenue. And so obviously there are tons of different types of assets out there. So you're building an asset in terms of your podcasts as well. So your podcasts, as they create more audiences, as more high profile people come on, as more people listen, they get more and more valuable. So in a similar way, we want to create assets in the marketplace that generate that goodwill, that lead flow, all of those sorts of things. And that's going to create a huge influx of people who are interested in what you do. Now, I'll talk about a specific type of marketing asset in a moment, but I'll stop there and let you ask any questions you've got there.
Yeah, well, let's talk about the different kinds of assets that are typical, and I'm guessing things like lead magnets and webinar recordings, replays, and things like that will be on the list. Short form videos that you upload to YouTube and TikTok and Instagram, that sort of stuff is probably the obvious stuff, but I'm especially interested to hear about the not obvious stuff.
Okay, so the not obvious is what I call a flagship asset. And so a flagship asset is an asset that you're kind of famous for in the marketplace. So for me, it's my book, The One Page Marketing Plan. If you would think of someone like Tim Ferriss, it might be the Tim Ferriss podcast. So it's an asset in the marketplace that you're famous for. It generates a lot of value and goodwill, which is really what lean marketing is all about. Lean marketing is all about how do we create so much value in the marketplace for even people who will never buy from us? We just want to create that goodwill in the marketplace, even for people who will never ever purchase from us. So we're generating a lot of goodwill, we're generating a lot of good value, and a fraction of the people who interact with our asset, download it, use it, or whatever else, will become clients, will pay us. In a similar way to how, let's say you're a musician, the dream come true for a musician is to have a lot of airplay. Why? Because a percentage of those people will buy albums, will go buy merch, will attend the concert, will spread the word, all of that sort of thing. Whereas probably 99% of the people will never do anything other than stream their music for free at home, which is totally fine as well. So in a similar way, we want to be famous for something. So I think a book is an excellent flagship asset for someone who's a thought leader or wants to be perceived as a thought leader. I think a podcast is a powerful flagship asset. Then there are content kind of flagship assets. Then you can have potentially tool kind of assets, or you can have experiential assets. So a tool kind of asset would be a tool that helps someone do something. So it could be a calculator, it could be a scorecard, it could be a quiz. For example, I'll give you, there's a there's a quiz called the love language quiz. So you go through it and you figure out what love language you are, and you're like, you're, that helps you with your love life or whatever else, right? So that's an example of a flagship tool that's out there. Then there are flagship experiences. So can you give someone a taster or an experience of what they're going to experience when they work with you? So at the most basic level, if you've ever walked through a mall and people are giving out free samples, that's an example of an experiential one, that a basic one. I'm a BMW customer, so frequently I'll get invitations from a BMW dealership to come on a drive day. Now, what's the point of drive days? It creates a lot of goodwill. You network with other BMW customers, but you also get to try the different models. You get to try the 7 Series, the X whatever, and all of that sort of thing. So again, you're experiencing what it's like to use your other products and services. So I break flagship assets down into 3 sort of subcategories. There's flagship content, there's flagship experiences, and there's flagship tools. And so you might find one or more are right for you. Usually there'll be 1 or 2 flagship assets that you really put all your effort into and give you the most return. And I kind of differentiate them a little bit from lead magnets. A lead magnet is usually very, very specific to the ad that you run. And if you've got 10 different ad sets, you might have 10 different lead magnets. So they're very specific to the ad copy, very specific to the promise you're making. Whereas a flagship asset is more expansive. It's kind of like, think of it as like your broad spectrum lead magnet. It's something that will get you a lot of notoriety in your marketplace.
Yeah. Yeah. So for you, it started out with the 1-page marketing plan. Hopefully the lean marketing book will be the next flagship asset for you with hundreds of thousands or millions of copies sold. And for me, it's the art of SEO. I have 3 books currently, but the art of SEO is the one I'm most known for. And it seems to me that there are different ways to leverage a flagship asset like a book. For example, inside the book itself, you could leverage that. You could also create companion pieces or I don't know, assets to the book. For example, an online course or a video-based series or a workbook or a planner or a guide or something like that. How are you leveraging your 1-page marketing plan as making that a flagship asset with all these additional side assets?
Yeah, so people read the book, which basically educates them about what our philosophy around marketing, how we approach marketing. And some people may not agree with that, and that's totally fine, but many people do. And they're like, when they reach out to us, when we get a lead that comes through, and we have many leads that come through every single day, because as a result of the book, they already know what it's about. They already know the value of it. They're not like, okay, what is this about and how much does it cost, right? They're like, cool, I'm on board. I love the book. I'm totally agree with the philosophy around it. I totally agree with the gaps that I've got in the marketplace. How do we work together, right? So we're working with leads that are so much higher quality than someone who just comes in and says, all right, what do you do? Why should I buy? How much is it? So it's much, much more powerful than that. And then throughout the book, we've got links to resources that go beyond the book, because obviously books are awesome, but they're limited in the fact that they're very difficult to update. They're very difficult to, like, you can't really include screenshots and how-tos and all of that in the book, because, that'll be out of date in a very, very short amount of time. And a book might be in print for years or decades. So for those faster moving resources, we point people to download links where they can download courses, where they can download worksheets, templates, and things like that. And they're things that me and my team update on a regular basis. And often we ask for someone just to enter their email address to get those resources for free. So it builds another asset in our business, which is our email list. And so our email list is a huge asset, because we connect directly with our audience. Amazon, as you know, as an author, and no book platforms really give you any insight into who your readers are. They don't give you their details or anything like that. So by including resources throughout the book and asking people to enter their email address on our website, we generate another asset that works for us, which is our email list. So whenever we've got something to offer or something to share with our audience, we've got that direct connection where we don't have to pay a toll booth to access that audience.
Yep.
So one asset compounds on another, and that's kind of like the analogy that I was using in the beginning: the rich get richer, right? So if you own assets and those assets generate income, you can use that income to buy or build more assets. And the exact same thing is true from a marketing perspective. My book is an asset that's out there generating a lot of goodwill. It creates people who opt in on our website, and that's creating a new asset. That's the email list. Now I'm about to launch another asset, which is a podcast. And so having an email list with thousands and thousands of people makes it much easier to launch and make that asset successful. So you get that kind of compounding effect where one asset improves another asset, improves another one, and you're just getting this snowball effect of leads, of customers, of revenue.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. Now, you mentioned experiential assets. What are you doing for your agency that is very experiential to your for your client or prospect?
Yeah. So we mainly focus on content style assets. Experiential assets tend to be ideal for when you want to communicate a type of feeling or whatever. I'll give you an example. For example, Red Bull are great at creating experiential assets. So, you see those Red Bull channels where they're jumping out of airplanes and all of that. And so what Red Bull are trying to do is communicate the feeling of energy, the feeling of, creating energy because of their energy drink, right? And so for us, really, the most powerful flagship assets that we've found is content for us. So it'll be different for every business. So when you do something very experiential, an experiential type of asset is probably the most powerful. Whereas what you do is knowledge or information, often a DIY version of what you do is the most powerful. And a lot of people worry about that. They're like, look, if I gave away all my secrets, why would anyone hire me? But I mean, you know firsthand that you've given away all of your secrets in your Art of SEO book. You're giving away exactly what you do, the method of what you do, how it's all done. Yet people pay you a lot of money to help them with their SEO. So what we've found is that giving away a DIY version of what you do is a very, very powerful flagship asset, because it drives people who are genuine buyers to come to you and say, look, I read your book, or I read your stuff, or I heard you on this podcast, or whatever. Sounds amazing. Can you help me do it?
Mm-hmm. So something like a podcast, which you are now embarking on, can be experiential. Right? It can be an experience for, let's say, the guest. Of course, it can be an experience for the listener too. If you can involve them in, let's say, the questioning of the guest. So, I don't know, send in an email with your questions, or use SpeakPipe to record an audio, and we might include your question for the guest, or in a Q&A episode, something like that. That might be a way to increase participation and make it more experiential. I don't know, what sort of ideas do you have cooking for your podcast to make it stand out?
Yeah, and for sure the lines are blurred between what's a experiential flagship asset, what's a content asset, and then what's just a marketing process, which we'll get to in a moment. What's content marketing in your business? So there's definitely lines that blur between them. It's not easy to sometimes say, hey, this is what it is, and that's all it is, and that's totally fine. But yeah, for sure, for my podcast, I'm going to do a lot of experimentation. So I'm experimenting with solo episodes. I'm experimenting with interview episodes, with answering questions. But I find some of the most powerful content in anything that I've ever done is answering the questions that we get in the sales process, answering questions that we get from clients. And that's something actually I learned from our mutual friend James Schramko. He creates a lot of the ways that he answers questions to his clients is by making a podcast episode about it or a social media post or whatever. I thought that's a very, very clever way, because first of all, you're answering the question for that specific person, but also if that person asked it, there's probably about 100 other people who have the same question but just haven't asked it. And so you're now creating content not by just dreaming some random stuff up. You're creating content that people actually want, that people are wondering, what's the answer to that question, and they read or listen or watch your content, and they're like, great, answered my question.
Yeah, you know what I'm thinking? I'm just kind of going to riff with you here. What would be really cool is if you could do hot seats and you're the hot seat, and then your guest is the expert on whatever the thing is that they're kind of do a tear down on, or a deconstruction. So, for example, LinkedIn expert does a tear down on or a kind of an audit on your LinkedIn profile and your LinkedIn presence. I could come on, do an
That's a cool
SEO
idea.
hot seat for you. And, I was talking to you offline before the recording. I was saying, hey, your new
Yeah,
book isn't in your Google Knowledge panel yet.
true.
Yeah. So that could be a way to like involve the listener in a more engaging way than just, oh, this is theoretically good stuff. But what if I'm learning on the fly from application of this knowledge? You can't do that for every listener. So using the host of the show, using you as the guinea pig, I think would be a perfect idea.
I love that. What have you found to be the most powerful sort of podcast episodes? I mean, you've been in the podcast game for quite a while now. What have you found works best and gets the most engagement?
Oh, well, this will really throw you for a loop. So I have another show that's a personal development podcast called Get Yourself Optimized. And some of my favorite and most popular episodes were with psychic mediums and with hypnotists, hypnotherapists, and things like that. So Marissa Peer, Sheila Gillette, etc. And if they're going to do channeling in the episode, that's my favorite, because then it's not just, hey, tell me how this all started. How did you first learn you were psychic? What are some of the most profound experiences that you've had? That's all good stuff. But hey, can I speak to the 12 archangels now? Can you step aside and we have a conversation with them? And they do that, like Paul Selig and Sheila Gillette. Amazing. So
Wow.
that's kind of one of my secret sauce things. Can't do that on a
So,
marketing
and is
show
that
though.
no, probably not. But is that because channeling is like a hot topic, or is that like why do you think that they're the most popular sort of episodes?
Well, they'll have a following for sure, and I think it's pretty fascinating. And I think even for the skeptic, they want to maybe listen to try and find something to debunk. Perhaps, I don't know, but yeah, I get a lot of engagement and listens and downloads, views, all that sort of stuff for those kind of episodes. Paul Selig is probably one of my most popular guests. He's been on 3 times now, which is pretty unusual for me to have a guest on multiple times. I've had Sheila Gillette on twice, and yeah, but then there are guests that, oh, this is really quality stuff, and it doesn't really hit. It does. I don't know. There's just it's weird how like one of my favorite episodes will not do that well, even though I guess it just doesn't have the hook or something. But I don't know.
Isn't that interesting? Like there are things that just hit with an audience, and things that fall flat, and often it's very, very hard to predict. Sometimes a campaign that I thought would have killed just falls flat, and sometimes I'm like, I don't even know if I want to launch this or whatever, and then that's a smash hit. So a lot of what we're doing as marketers is testing and measuring, like, and we want the marketplace to tell us. Like, it's a lot of people say, will send me their ad or whatever for critique and say, hey, what do you think of this? And I mean, I can give them a technical critique. I can say, look, you should have the opt-in box here or there, or remove this or add this to your landing page. But in terms of things like offers and things like that, mostly it's I say, look, it really doesn't matter what I think. It's kind of irrelevant. It's what does your market think, and how will your market react? And the best way to do that is to test it. So we can have like a scientist, we can have a hypothesis and we can have a theory of what may happen, but really we've got to get into the lab and see what actually happens.
Mm-hmm. So what's an example of a campaign that fell flat and you were surprised by that?
So, I mean, there's been tons of them, but sometimes it'll be just, for example, an ads. Well, I'll give you an example. So, for the book Lean Marketing, I had about 10 or 20 subtitles that I wanted to test, and I had a theory around which one would go best, and I was nowhere near it. So, I think the subtitle that actually worked best was one that I almost discounted. Almost didn't even bother having in the test. So we ran some Facebook ads and saw which one actually hit the most. So that was an example. In the past, we've launched products where I'm like, this is amazing. People are gonna love this, and again, kind of fell flat. That was like a membership program that we launched. It did okay, but it certainly wasn't the smash hit I was expecting to be. And then we kind of launched a side service, like, back in the day in our coaching program. And I think this is probably an issue with a lot of coaching programs. They're adding stuff to people's to-do list. So let's say if you were a client, you and I, we would agree on a strategy. We'd say, all right, Stephan, we're going to do this, that, and the other to promote your podcast. So I need you to do this. I need you to hire that person. I need you to whatever. We'd get it back on a call in a week or 2 weeks, and you haven't done anything. Why haven't you done anything? I've been busy, been putting out this fire, had this employee problem, or whatever. Very typical for most entrepreneurs, because they're just across so many different things. And also, they tend to be not great micro implementers. They tend to be big picture people. They tend to be visionaries, which is a very important role, but they're just not great implementers. They'll usually implement either a little bit or get bored of it or get distracted or whatever. And so a huge shift came into place when we said, all right, we will hire a marketing coordinator for you. We will train them. We will get them to actually execute the stuff. And that was a smash hit. And I never expected that. I never expected to be, first of all, in the recruitment business where we're hiring a marketing coordinator, where we're training them, where we're implementing. But that was a smash hit. And so clients started getting really good results. We were removing stuff from the entrepreneur's to-do list, and things were getting done. Social media posts were happening, emails were going out, stuff that we were just, we were trying to fit a square peg in a round hole with an entrepreneur. Where, like, Stephan, you've got to send 2 emails out a week. Your email list is going to go cold. And you'd say, yes, I'm going to do that. We get back on a call next week. You haven't done it. You haven't implemented the process. So, and that's very typical for entrepreneurs. I'm one of those people. I'm more of a big picture thinker. I'm more prone to getting bored, to getting distracted by something or whatever. And I need my team to actually do the implementation, to make sure that scheduling gets done, to make sure that, emails go out, that posts go out, all of that sort of stuff. So often it's a matter of staffing your weaknesses and doubling down on your strengths. And so really recognizing as an entrepreneur what's a weakness and a strength is super important, and staffing those weaknesses. So that's what we did with that program. We helped entrepreneurs staff their weaknesses. And like I said, I never expected that to be a hit, but it was.
That's awesome. And so how do you go about finding marketing coordinators? These are people who are on your payroll or on the client's payroll?
No, they're employed by the client.
Yeah.
We just help them hire and screen the right person, and then we'll work with them to implement. So we're kind of the opposite of an agency. So an agency will do the stuff for you. We help you develop your own capability, and I think that's a huge differentiator. But I think it's hugely important because marketing has gotten way more complicated. And also, no one's going to know your business as well as you do. No one's going to care about your business as much as you do. And so, for an agency, even if they do really, really well for you, which very few agencies do. I mean, you're in the agency business, and you've seen every sort of cowboy and crazy promises and things like that, and you know that someone can't deliver what they're promising for that low price that they're offering, right? There are agencies that promise to deliver amazing results at very low prices, and for a fact that there's no possible way that they can do that. So a lot of what we do is help empower the business owner, help them develop their own intellectual property in-house, because in my opinion, there's no intellectual property that's more valuable in your business than the ability to get a client reliably over and over. So that's something that I want our clients to own. So, like I said, even if an agency did an amazing job for you, they still own that intellectual property. They're still the ones who've got that black box, who know what to do. Now, that doesn't mean I'm anti-agency. I think agencies have their place for specialized tasks, not for your general marketing, but for super highly specialized tasks. So we will work with an agency for pay-per-click ads, or someone who's an expert in whatever platform, a TikTok or a Pinterest or whatever. So for highly specialized tasks, absolutely. I want the propeller head who spent all his life trying to figure this stuff out and hack it together. But for your general marketing, for someone who wakes up in the morning and thinks, all right, what are we going to do from a marketing perspective today? That person should be sitting inside of your business.
Gotcha. I like that angle of certainly it's a differentiator of being the opposite of an agency. That's cool.
When they're opposite of an agency. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's get into your processes. And then I want to get back to something you mentioned earlier, which was if your email list has gone cold, if you haven't been sending emails like once or twice a week, your email list is going to be cold. And I want to know about how to warm that email list up if it has gone cold. But first, I want to get through the processes.
Sure. So processes are kind of so I think Einstein said compound interest was the eighth wonder of the world, and so the marketing equivalent of compound interest is processes. So a lot of people think of marketing as an event rather than a process. It's the big rebrand, it's the website launch, it's the whatever. Whereas you and I know as sophisticated marketers that really where you're going to get the big results is by doing the daily, weekly, monthly stuff. It's just going to compound over time. It's the podcast episode you do once or twice a week. It's the emails that you send to your list twice or three times a week. That's how you're going to get that compound interest, that snowball effect in your marketing. So you've got your tools. Let's say you've got the perfect CRM system, the AI tools, all of that sort of thing. You've got amazing assets in the marketplace. You've got a book, or you've got a podcast, or you've got a flagship experience, or whatever. Processes are where we put those to work, right? So it's where we're doing the outreach, it's where we're doing the email, it's where we're doing the podcasts, where we're doing the content marketing. So, and again, like I was alluding to earlier, most entrepreneurs, despite their best intentions, they're not the best people to run processes. I think Gino Wickman talks about an integrator type and a visionary. Most entrepreneurs tend to be visionaries, and you really need that integrator type who's just showing up every day, driving the bus, who's, all right, it's Monday, we've got to get an email out. It's Tuesday, we've got to get content out. It's Wednesday, we've got to get that podcast done. So entrepreneurs tend to be not that person. So you need either, you can call them whatever, your COO, your marketing coordinator, your whatever, but you need that person who's that integrator in your business, who's getting those processes done, those daily, weekly, monthly processes. That's how you're going to generate that compound interest from a marketing perspective.
Yep. Gino Wickman was a guest, by the way.
Oh, was he awesome? He
Yeah.
was very generous to endorse lean marketing, so we've got him on the cover as well. His endorsement of lean marketing.
Oh, that's awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
He's super
yeah.
cool.
Gino's super smart guy, and we're big fans of Traction.
Yeah. Yeah. So, for our listener who's not familiar with Gino Wickman, he is the creator of Entrepreneurial Operating System, or EOS.
Yes, yes. Which again is very much process driven. So those systems that just it's the boring stuff daily, weekly, monthly. And I think a lot of what we see on Instagram, a lot of what we see on TikTok or whatever, it's people's highlight reels. And it looks like just, someone with a cell phone riffing, having a great time. And you don't see those 20 people they've got employed behind the camera who are editors, script writers, all of that sort of thing. You just see Gary V, spitting really cool sayings and things like that. But you don't know about the team that he's got, the 20 people who wrote a script, who edited the video, who put it all together, who are pushing it out to different platforms and things like that. So, and that doesn't necessarily mean that you need 20 people, but you definitely need someone who's taking care of that daily, weekly, monthly process. So many times from looking in from the outside, it looks like just someone's it's really easy. Like that podcast, is just doing interviews or whatever, but you don't see all of the behind the scenes work that's going on in terms of editing, in terms of promotion, in terms of email, in terms of all of those sorts of things. So you really need those processes. You need that force multiplier within your team so that you create that compounding effect.
Yep, for sure. All right. And what's your favorite, I don't know, case example or, I don't know, kind of cautionary tale, perhaps, in regards to processes?
A very typical scenario we encounter is an entrepreneur who's been quite successful in their business or their industry. They've got a massive database because they've just got lots of clients, and they've usually done that through their own blood, sweat, and tears because they're good at whatever they do. They're in manufacturing, they're in construction, they're in medical space or whatever, and they kind of hit a plateau. And the reason they hit a plateau is because there's only 24 hours in a day, and they need to sleep for roughly 7 or 8 hours. They need to do other things, and so most of their work has been a result of their own labor. And so it's a massive turning point when we can put in some assets and some processes in those businesses and just massively compound what they're doing. So really, in most cases, we will work with a client and they've got this big database of emails or whatever. And I'm like, how often have you emailed that list? And like, pretty much never. Like we just collected those email addresses because we sold them stuff, right? So they've got these big assets that they're sitting on and they've never really used them. So a lot of and they've never really used them, not because they're dumb, not because they're lazy, not whatever, but just because they don't have those processes in place. They don't have Jenny who wakes up at 9 a.m., Jenny who wakes up in the morning and works the email list, or Bob who wakes up in the morning and sends out content or whatever. They just don't have those processes in place. So often a big unlock is just putting in those daily, weekly, monthly processes. And sometimes it's about also just doing simple stuff like a handwritten note to some of your best clients. A gift basket at an important event for one of your clients. Your client had a baby or something like that, sending something out. So somebody's going to be taking care of those processes. And often, like I said, the entrepreneur is not the ideal person to do that.
Yeah.
So they're some of the biggest unlock. And like I said, a lot of people have criticized some of my work. They said, oh, it's just all common sense. And 100% agree with that criticism. It is common sense, but it's not common practice. So, we know that collecting email addresses on your website is a good idea, but most websites don't do it. We know keeping in contact with your email list on a regular basis is a good idea. Most people don't do it. We know creating powerful story-based content in your content marketing is a good idea, but most people don't do it. So a lot of what we're doing is just turning common sense into common practice.
I like that. All right. So I want to circle back to that one question that I had about if your email list has gone cold. So what do you do?
Yeah. So the first thing that I'd do with a client is run it through some sort of validation tool. So there's like Never Bounce and I can't remember the name of the other. There's tons of them anyway. So get rid of email addresses that are invalid or suspect or whatever. So clean up your list that way. Then the next thing that I would do, and I think particularly from February 2024, there's new changes in the way emails are delivered. So there are a few technologies. There's one called SPF, there's one called DMARC, and DKIM, making sure that you've got those implemented. And you don't have to get into all the technical details of all that. You can get your tech geek to help you do that, but just making sure that emails are technically signed properly. So it's kind of like the equivalent of if we were posting a letter, making sure that there's a stamp, there's a valid address, there's a valid return to sender, and all of that sort of thing set up. So get some of the technical details for your email domain set up. And then I would just start warming up that list. So depending on the size of the list, if your list is under 5,000 records, you could probably just start emailing them all. If it's a lot more than that, then you might start emailing segment by segment, because one of the things that you don't want to happen is for email services to kind of mark you as spam because you had this massive surge of outbound emails. So if they kind of look at patterns, right? So if on average your domain generates 1,000 emails per month, and then suddenly you're sending 500,000 emails, that's kind of a suspect activity, and that might get flagged as spam. So you want to make sure that you're gradually warming up your domain and your IP addresses and the system that you're sending from. And then I'd look at the content factors. I'd be looking at what are you actually going to send? What's actually going to create a lot of value for your target market? And we can talk about how my view on formatting emails and where they should come from and all of that. I can have a chat about that. But
Yeah, I'm
does that
curious.
answer?
Like I know that Dean Jackson came up with a 9-word email concept, which I really like, and it's kind of anti-marketing in that it doesn't even look like you used a professional or a tool or anything to send the email out. So,
That's exactly right. And a lot of what we recommend, email. Dean Jackson is an awesome email marketer, by the way. So his stuff is really solid. The 9-word email is excellent. A lot of what we're trying to do with email marketing is create that intimate connection. So the mistake I see a lot of people make, they've got this big HTML email with tons of graphics. It comes from a role-based email address like info at or sales at or whatever. So if you look at the emails that we send out, they come from Allan at our domain. They also they're also very plainly formatted. We don't have our logo. We don't have a lot of graphics or whatever. So even though we're sending to thousands and thousands of people the same email, I want it to feel like a one-on-one email. So if you think about an email that you would have got from a friend, it's probably not going to come from info at or sales at. It's probably not going to be a big graphical HTML email with lots of graphics and things like that. It's probably just going to be a plain text email. So it'll be like, hey, Stephan, I'd love to catch up with you for lunch next week. You around on Wednesday afternoon or whatever, right? And it'll be plainly formatted and it'll be signed off just with the person's name. So we're trying to replicate as much of that as possible. So we're trying to make it feel like it's just an email sent from me to you. And what we want to do with a lot of that is encourage replies. That's another big mistake that people make with email marketing. That's the worst. In fact, when it comes from no reply at, why would you want someone to not reply to one of your marketing emails? I mean, they're the warmest clients. Someone who replies and says, "Great email," or "Tell me more about this," or "Can you explain that?" or whatever. That's now a lead. So that's someone who's now engaged with your content and interested in what you've got to offer. So we encourage replies. We're like, hit reply and just tell us what's a challenge, or hit reply and tell us your experience with this or that. And again, that's a process within my team now. is replying to those replies and handling those replies. Because here's the thing: now we're mailing to our list. In our case, we mail our list twice a week, and we get heaps of replies to those. So if we're encouraging replies, now we need to man that help desk and make sure that people are getting responses to their replies. Their replies are getting handled appropriately.
Mm-hmm.
So again, you can see how those assets and those processes are compounding on each other. We've got the book, which gets people on our email list. Our emails go out twice a week. That's a process. Those emails generate replies. Those replies often, if they look qualified or whatever, go to our sales team. Our sales team will give them a call or follow up or whatever else. And so we've got that team that's working those processes. We've got those assets that are out there in the marketplace generating the inbound. And we've got the right tools facilitating all of that.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. So I'm curious if you're going to add another email to your weekly regimen because of your podcast to let people know the podcast episode hit this week, and here's the topic, and here's the guest, here's what we did, and here's some of the takeaways. You might want to listen to this episode. Is that in the works?
Yeah, I'm definitely going to experiment with it. We found that we used to email 3 times a week, and I decided to cut back to 2 as a test, and we found that was a good balance for our business. And having said that, frequency is something that I'm most often asked when it comes to email marketing. So how often should I mail? And that's something that's going to be dependent on your own business. I'll give you a couple of examples. So for example, if you're a stockbroker, it wouldn't be weird to email your list twice a day, right? In the morning, you might be like, look, these companies are going to report today. What these are potential buy and hold recommendations or whatever. And then in the evening, it might be a wrap up of what's happened in the market, right? Market news. Okay, today there was a big movement in Google or Meta or whatever, and this is what this means for tomorrow and the coming week or whatever. So a business like that might email twice a day. Whereas my plumber, I don't really want to hear from him every day or twice a day, right? So I think as a baseline for most businesses, once a week is the minimum. So if you email less than once a week, you risk your list going cold. And by list going cold, meaning people don't remember that they subscribed or they forget who you are, or whatever. Because I mean, if you think as an entrepreneur, how much stuff happens in the course of a week? It's a lot. Like you're dealing with your team, you're dealing with clients, you're dealing with employees, and so that's the case with all of your audience. So, I mean, if I think back what happened a week from now, I can't even remember. Like I have to look at my calendar. So, and that's the case for most people. So I would say as a baseline, the minimum that you want to email your list is once a week, and it could potentially be twice or 3 times a day, depending on your business and your type of business and what the expectations of your customer base are.
Yep. And you constantly have to course correct. It's not like you just set in the course for, I don't know, New York City, and you've left London and you just leave it to its own devices. You have to keep course correcting. Otherwise you'll end up in the North Pole or something.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
What have you found works best with podcasts? Do you email for every podcast, or do you highlight a particular podcast episode to your list, or what have you found works best?
Well, what I've settled on is a newsletter a weekly newsletter called My Thursday 3. And these are 3 things. One thing that intrigues me, one that inspires me, and one that challenged me. At the beginning of all this, I feature the 2 episodes for the week, one on Get Yourself Optimized and one on Marketing Speak, with a little quote from each one and a little kind of not video, but it's an animated GIF with a few seconds of the person talking. So it looks like something they might want to click on. So it used to be that I would send out an email all about the episode, but it didn't really take hold. It wasn't as, I don't know, engaging. Whereas this approach, they get really interesting stuff that they probably haven't heard about, some new trend or tool or idea or something, something counterintuitive. and I'll add it to, I used to use Pocket, but now I use Readwise Reader. I add these things as I discover them, whether it's a YouTube video or a podcast episode or whatever. And then my team logs into my Readwise Reader account and then pulls from that and drafts up an email newsletter for the week. So it's not even me writing it.
Nice, nice. Well, that's awesome, and there you go. So that's a process that you've got in your business, and it's getting done.
Yeah.
And in all likelihood, if that was left on your to-do list, it may get done sometimes, and it may not
It
get
may
done
never
other
get
times
done,
because you
actually. Probably never.
exactly. I wanted to ask you actually, and I'm asking this of many successful podcasters. What are your thoughts on YouTube, like in terms of podcast? Are you finding audio is much more powerful, or is the YouTube segment growing? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, for me, the YouTube segment is growing and it's becoming more and more important. I used to only do audio only, didn't even record the video. And that was for a number of years. And then I finally realized like I should be recording the video too. And so I recorded it, but didn't actually do anything with it. And then we started posting them to YouTube, and we got very few views per video. It didn't seem like it was worth the time. The juice wasn't worth the squeeze, or whatever the expression is, right? And then we started playing around with shorts, and those have been working out pretty well. Some will get hundreds of views, but then there will be some standout successes that are getting thousands of views from the same guest. So we'll do 4 or 5 per guest and find that maybe one hits and the others didn't. And so we're finessing and fine tuning as we go along. And yeah, I think that's an interesting growth opportunity with the short form video content on YouTube, and it does have more staying power. It's more evergreen than posting it as an Instagram reel.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I found my behavior as a consumer, I've almost switched completely to YouTube as where I consume my podcasts, because I mean I can have the audio component, or if I'm in a position to watch the video as well, like for example, if I'm working out or whatever, I'll yeah, sure, I'll watch the video or have the video component up. I think I mean, and part of the reason my behavior is that way is because I'm a subscriber to the premium YouTube where you don't get the ads and
Yeah,
where you can have the
me
audio
too.
play in the background.
How could
Uh,
anybody?
and
How can anyone survive with the free YouTube? I just couldn't imagine it.
you just get assaulted with ads and all of that. But my view is if YouTube made that feature free, they would dominate podcasts. I think that's probably the only thing stopping them from dominating podcasts is that you can't really play them in the background unless you're a subscriber with the YouTube app. That's still the case, isn't it? I'm not. I think it was definitely the case a while ago. But like, if you played a YouTube video, you couldn't have it just running in the background unless you were a YouTube subscriber, like on your phone
Right.
or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think if they made that feature free, they would absolutely dominate podcasts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, for I think one action item for our listener is clear. If you're not a YouTube premium subscriber, pay the $10 a month or whatever it is. It's
Yeah,
worth your time to get that back. Get that time back and not be assaulted with ads.
totally.
Yeah, awesome. Well, this was great. Glad to have you back on the show, and you're creating such great content for the world. You're making people accountable to their marketing, so it's not just about dumbing it down to something that's actionable in terms of a strategy. Now you're helping them to implement that one pager. That's awesome.
Oh, thanks, Stephan. And yeah, I'm hopeful that the people will get a lot of value out of the new book. It's really about implementation. It's about getting that leverage, that marketing leverage in your
Yeah,
business. So,
and it's a no-brainer. It's $3. Yeah, awesome. And
that's it.
again, the website and socials and all that, and the for also the book, where to get that from.
Yeah, so the book is on Amazon. My website is leanmarketing.com. And on socials, I'm at Allan Dib on all platforms. So feel free to connect, say hi. I'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. And lean marketing isn't just the name of the book, it's the name of your agency, right?
Yeah, we've totally rebranded because I'm going all in on lean.
Yeah. Or
I think lean is
the
such a powerful,
anti-agency, I should say.
the
Lean marketing
anti-agency, exactly.
anti-agency.
That's exactly what it is. It's the anti-agency. I'm not anti-agency. Like I said, I think agencies have their place for very specialized tasks, but certainly to, you know, lean is such an important concept. It's been so transformational in a lot of industries, and I think marketing is ripe for transformation as well by implementing some of the lean strategies.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, congratulations on all your success, and thanks for coming back on the show.
Thanks so much, Stephan.
All right. And thank you, listener. Get out there and make the world a better place. We'll catch you on the next episode. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, signing off.